What if I told you that in America, your freedom isn't guaranteed by the Constitution, it's rented by the hour? Meet Marcus. He didn't hurt anyone. He didn't steal. He missed a court date over a suspended license ticket, something that started with a broken tail light. The judge set his bail at $500, not $10,000, just $500. For you, maybe that's a weekend trip or an iPhone payment. For Marcus, it might as well have been $5 million. And so he sat. 3 months in county jail, lost his job, lost his apartment, lost custody of his daughter, all without a trial, all without a conviction. His crime: he was too poor to buy his freedom, and Marcus isn't alone. Tonight, across the United States, over 400,000 people are sitting in jail, not because they've been found guilty, but because they simply can't afford bail. Let that sink in. No violent offense, no sentencing, just a number set by a judge and a wallet that couldn't meet it. In this episode of System Fails, we uncover the brutal truth behind America's for-profit bail system. A system where innocent until proven guilty doesn't apply if you're broke. This isn't law, this is leverage, and it's rigged. Let's begin. Marcus didn't wake up that morning expecting to be arrested. It was a Tuesday, just another morning on the edge of paycheck-to-paycheck living. He got his daughter ready for school, packed her a turkey sandwich and an orange, kissed her forehead and told her, "Be good today, I love you." Then he drove to work. The same construction job he'd held for almost 2 years. Nothing fancy. 10 hours on the site, 30 minutes of unpaid lunch, 37 minutes of traffic on the way home. Except that morning, he never made it to work. 2 blocks from the job site, red and blue lights lit up behind his aging Dodge Caravan. Marcus pulled over, heart pounding. He knew the car needed repairs, but money was tight. Maybe it was the cracked tail light. It was. The officer ran his license, then asked Marcus to step out of the vehicle. There was a bench warrant. Marcus had missed a court hearing for a citation he couldn't pay, something buried under bills and eviction notices. He had tried to go once, but his daughter had been sick. He picked her over the court. That decision would cost him everything. He was handcuffed on the spot, charged with failure to appear, and held on $500 bail. Marcus didn't panic at first. He figured they'd sort it out in a day or 2. He'd explain. Maybe someone could help. He just needed to make a few calls. But county jail isn't built for explanations. It's built for containment. No lawyer was assigned yet. No bail reduction hearing was offered. He sat in a crowded holding cell, then was moved to a dorm pod where 40 men shared 5 phones and 3 showers. He asked the guard if he could call his sister to bring the money. "You get 5 minutes, the guard said. "Don't cry if they don't pick up." They didn't. His sister was working a night shift. No one answered, no voicemail, no callback. Marcus was officially trapped. What happened next is disturbingly common. His boss assumed he'd quit. After 3 missed shifts, he was replaced. His landlord issued a 3-day notice. Rent was already late, and now there was no paycheck coming in. His daughter, just 9 years old, was picked up from school by child welfare workers after the school couldn't reach anyone for 2 days. CPS marked her case as neglect due to parental absence. It would take Marcus 11 weeks to get out. Not because he was guilty, not because he had a lawyer, but because a local bail fund, run by volunteers, finally had enough donations to cover his release. By then, the damage was done. Job, gone. Apartment, locked. Custody, under review. And his daughter? Living with a foster family 2 towns away. Marcus wasn't a criminal, but the system treated him like one. His original offense? Driving with a suspended license, a suspension issued because he couldn't afford to pay a previous ticket. Let's recap. A traffic infraction led to a fine. The fine led to a license suspension. The suspension led to another citation. That citation led to a warrant. The warrant led to $500 bail, and the unpaid bail led to 3 months in jail. Every step along the way, Marcus's only real crime was poverty. This wasn't a fluke. This is the design. He remembers the moment they released him. The steel doors buzzed open. A guard said, "You're lucky. Someone paid." He stepped into the sunlight, clutching a plastic bag with his clothes, his bus pass, and his court paperwork. No phone, no cash, no ride. He didn't feel lucky. He felt erased. Marcus is just one of millions caught in the web of cash bail. This system doesn't ask if you're a flight risk. It doesn't ask if you're a danger to others. It only asks, can you afford to leave? And if the answer is no, your life starts to fall apart in silence, behind bars, without a single guilty verdict. In the next section, we'll pull back the curtain on how this system works, who profits from it, and why America is the only wealthy country where freedom is something you pay for. Let's be clear. Marcus didn't fall through the cracks. He fell into a system designed to trap him there. What is cash bail? Cash bail is supposed to guarantee that someone charged with a crime returns to court. It's not meant to punish. It's not meant to detain. It's supposed to be a temporary deposit. You pay money, show up to court, and get it back. That's the theory. But in practice, bail has become a price tag on freedom, and for millions of Americans, that price is unreachable. Who sets bail? In most counties, a judge sets bail based on the charge, a bail schedule, a preset list of prices for each offense, and personal discretion. But here's the catch. Judges often don't have time to review full histories. Many bail hearings last less than 3 minutes. In some places, they're done via video screen without even seeing the accused in person. So what happens? Bail is assigned automatically, regardless of your financial situation, your family responsibilities, or your record of always showing up. The numbers are staggering. Over 60% of people in U.S. jails are pre-trial, meaning they haven't been convicted. Nearly half of them are there only because they can't afford bail. Median bail for a felony, $10,000. Median American savings account, less than $500. In short, most Americans can't afford to be arrested. Enter the bail bondsman. Here's where the system gets even murkier. Let's say you can't afford the $1,000 bail. You can pay a bail bondsman a non-refundable 10% fee, in this case, $100. The bondsman pays the full bail on your behalf, and if you show up to court, the money is returned to the bondsman. Sounds helpful, right? But that $100, you never get it back. Even if you're found innocent, even if charges are dropped, and if you miss court, by accident, by illness, or by bureaucratic error, the bondsman can send a bounty hunter to your home. That's not a movie trope. That's real policy. Who profits? The cash bail industry is worth $2 billion a year in the U.S. It's backed by powerful lobbying groups, funded by insurance companies, and protected by laws written to discourage reform. In California, New York, Texas, bail bond associations have spent millions fighting bail reform. In many counties, they work closely with local judges and sheriffs. And in some places, courts collect a processing fee from bail payments, meaning even public systems profit off detention. Think about that. Your local government has a financial interest in keeping people locked up, the system's logic. What happens if you're poor? You can't afford bail. You lose your job. You miss rent. Your kids are taken. You're pressured to plead guilty just to get out. Now you have a criminal record, and fewer options for housing, jobs, and benefits. That's the plan. The system squeezes the most vulnerable, not to protect society, but to extract maximum financial and legal concessions. But what about justice? Proponents say bail is necessary to prevent flight risk, but studies show most people return to court without paying bail. Text reminders work better than detention. Cities that eliminated cash bail saw no increase in crime, so why keep it? Because fear sells and bail pays. The truth is this: in America, freedom is not a right, it's a rental agreement with interest, conditions, and penalties. Marcus didn't fail. The system did, and it does, every single day, to thousands who committed no violent act, no serious crime, just the crime of not having enough money. The numbers tell one story, but the faces behind those numbers tell another. One of race, class, and quiet devastation. Because while the bail system can entrap anyone, it doesn't entrap everyone equally. Let's start with the most obvious truth. If you're black or brown in America, you're far more likely to be arrested, more likely to be assigned bail, and less likely to be able to pay it. A black man is over 5 times more likely to be incarcerated than a white man. And once arrested, judges are more likely to set higher bail for black and Latino defendants, even when the charges and records are identical. It's not just bias. It's the architecture of systemic punishment. Take the case of Tanisha, a single mother in Georgia. Her car was pulled over for having expired registration tags. She had 2 kids in the back seat, a diaper bag, and $27 in her bank account. The officer found an old warrant, failure to appear for a court fine from 5 years ago. She was taken to jail and held on $250 bail. Her family couldn't reach her. Her kids were placed into temporary custody. She spent 6 days behind bars before a local bail relief fund could help. Tanisha lost her job at a daycare center. CPS kept her under supervision for months. Her name was entered into a state database for parental neglect. And when she tried to apply for a new job, the arrest, though never resulting in a conviction, still showed up in background checks. Her story isn't rare. It's standard. Women, especially mothers, face unique punishment in this system. Being jailed for even a few days can lead to child removal, eviction, job loss, and the destruction of family structure. And when they're released, they're expected to rebuild all of it, alone. Then there are the disabled and chronically ill. Many are arrested for quality of life infractions, sleeping in public, loitering, minor theft. These arrests often stem from poverty, untreated mental illness, or lack of stable housing. When they can't pay bail, they end up in jails without proper medical care, denied medication, therapy, or even access to bathrooms that meet their needs. Some don't make it out alive. In 2022 alone, more than 1,000 people died in U.S. jails while awaiting trial. Many of them were there for non-violent offenses. Many were too poor to leave. Several died within 48 hours of their arrest. The LGBTQ+ community is another invisible target. Trans people, especially black and brown trans women, face disproportionate policing and often end up in jail after loitering or disorderly conduct arrests. Once inside, they face extreme danger, sexual violence, solitary confinement, and lack of access to hormone treatment. And because family support may already be fragile, no one comes to bail them out. And what about teenagers? In many states, 16 and 17-year-olds are tried as adults. They're arrested for minor offenses, slapped with adult charges, and given adult bail terms, amounts their families can't possibly afford. Some are held for weeks in adult facilities, missing school, falling behind, and traumatized before they even understand the charges. The damage isn't temporary. A few days in jail can lead to years of consequences. Here's what one unpaid bail can cost: a full-time job, custody of your child, access to government housing, your spot in school or job training, a clean background check, and in some cases, your life. And yet, wealthier people charged with the same offenses walk out the same day. No record, no disruption, no loss, because they can. They pay the price of freedom with cash. The people who suffer most under this system are those already living at the edge, financially, socially, medically. The bail system doesn't just reflect inequality, it reinforces it. It feeds off it. It creates a two-tiered justice system. One for the rich, who go home, and one for the poor, who stay locked in, sometimes forever. Up next, we'll look at the rising resistance to this broken model. From bail reform victories to court challenges and community-driven alternatives, we'll meet the people fighting back and the powerful interests trying to stop them. The cash bail system may be deeply entrenched, but it's not unchallenged. Across the country, public defenders, civil rights lawyers, grassroots organizers, and even some judges have declared war on wealth-based detention. They're pushing back, and sometimes they're winning. In New York City 2017, Kalief Browder's name shook the conscience of the nation. Arrested at 16 for allegedly stealing a backpack, Kalief was held at Rikers Island for 3 years without trial, 2 of those in solitary confinement simply because his family couldn't post $3,000 bail. He maintained his innocence the entire time. When his charges were finally dropped, it was too late. Kalief took his own life at 22. His story became a rallying cry. Politicians invoked his name, activists demanded change, and the public, for once, started paying attention. That same year, grassroots groups began organizing bailouts, literally paying bail for strangers. One of the most famous, the National Bailout Collective, a black-led group that raised funds to free black mothers from jail on Mother's Day. In just 1 week, they freed over 100 women, none of whom missed their court dates. That shattered one of the system's core lies, that people need financial pressure to show up for justice. Since then, dozens of community bail funds have emerged, local groups raising money, bailing out arrestees, and proving that pre-trial freedom works. But the movement hasn't stopped at charity. It's gone to court. In Harris County, Texas, home to Houston, a federal judge ruled that the local cash bail system was unconstitutional. For years, the county had jailed thousands for minor offenses like trespassing or driving without a license. If you couldn't pay the $500 bail, you stayed in. If you could, you walked free. The court called it what it was, a modern-day debtor's prison. That decision sparked a wave of lawsuits in cities like New Orleans, Chicago, and Atlanta. Some succeeded, some stalled, but each one added pressure. Legislators have joined the fight too, at least in some states. New Jersey passed one of the most progressive bail reforms in the country, virtually eliminating cash bail for most non-violent offenses. California tried to follow suit with SB 10, a law to abolish cash bail entirely. New York implemented major reforms in 2020, reducing the number of offenses eligible for pre-trial detention. The early results? Encouraging. In places where bail was eliminated or reduced, court appearance rates stayed high, jail populations dropped, recidivism did not rise, and taxpayers saved millions. But none of this came easy, and none of it is safe. In California, the bail industry spent over $8 million to overturn SB 10 through a public referendum. They framed the law as soft on crime and manipulated fears about public safety, and they won. In New York, police unions and prosecutors mounted a relentless media campaign after bail reform passed. Every crime was politicized, every mistake weaponized. Lawmakers caved, rollbacks followed. Even in New Jersey, courts quietly began expanding pre-trial detention again, especially after high-profile crimes sparked media panic. That's the pattern. Push for reform, win small gains, face backlash, fight to protect them, because this system has defenders. Wealthy ones. The commercial bail industry is powerful, politically connected, and backed by insurers who profit off incarceration. In some states, they've written the very laws that regulate their existence. But despite this, the resistance grows. From courtrooms to city halls to jailhouse doors, people are rising up, not just to protest, but to replace. to envision a world where freedom isn't something you have to buy, where showing up to court doesn't require selling your car, where innocence means release, not ruin. It's not utopia, it's already working, in places that dared to try. The question is, why hasn't the rest of the country followed? Up next, we turn the mirror toward ourselves. We've seen who suffers, we've seen who profits. Now it's time to ask, why do we allow it? Let's stop and ask the question we've been circling all along. How did we end up here? How did a country that claims to value freedom, fairness, and due process build a justice system that locks people up for being broke? The answer isn't just politics. It's culture, history, power, and profit. America's criminal justice system was never designed to be neutral. It was designed from the very beginning to control certain people, namely the poor, the marginalized, and the unwanted. The cash bail system we see today has roots going back centuries, but it grew into a monster during the war on drugs. The rise of mass incarceration and the tough-on-crime era of the 1980s and 90s. Politicians competed to look tougher. Judges feared being seen as soft, and voters were sold a myth that locking people up quickly and often was the only way to stay safe. But here's what they didn't say: that most people held pre-trial are there for non-violent, low-level charges. That missing court is usually caused by poverty, confusion, or lack of transportation, not intent to flee. And that once you've jailed someone, even for a few days, you've already altered the outcome of their life, long before any jury sees a shred of evidence. We justify it with words like public safety and accountability. But there's a darker truth. We punish poverty because it's easier than fixing it. We fine people for being poor. We arrest them for failing to pay those fines. Then we jail them because they can't afford bail. And when they finally get out, we shame them for not pulling themselves up fast enough. It's not just a flaw. It's a feature. And it's baked into every level of the system, from police quotas to prosecutor incentives to court fees that fund local governments. Yes, you heard that right. Some counties rely on bail money to balance their budgets. Some judges get re-elected based on how many people they jail. And some states privatize their jail systems entirely, turning human confinement into a corporate revenue stream. This isn't about justice. It's about control. It's about compliance. And above all, it's about money. We are told that bail is necessary to ensure people return to court. But if that were true, how do you explain the hundreds of jurisdictions, both in the US and around the world, that don't use cash bail and still have higher appearance rates than we do? How do you explain that text message reminders are more effective than bail threats? How do you explain that New Jersey, after eliminating most cash bail, saw no spike in crime, only a drop in unnecessary jail time? The truth is, we don't need cash bail. We choose it, and we allow it to continue because the people it hurts most are the ones with the least political power: the poor, the disabled, the undocumented, the forgotten. They don't write campaign checks. They don't run for office. And when they vanish into the system, most of us never notice. Out of sight, out of mind, out of justice. That's the system we've built. But just because it was built that way doesn't mean it has to stay that way. In our final segment, we'll return to Marcus and ask the question we should have asked from the start. What would real justice look like? Marcus walked out of that jail with a garbage bag of his belongings, an overdue court summons, and no idea where his daughter had been taken. He wasn't guilty. He had no trial. He served no sentence. And yet, he paid with 3 months of his life. He paid with his job. He paid with his home. He paid with the trauma that still haunts him. But Marcus is just one face of a crisis that spans millions. Every day in America, people sit in jail cells, not because they're dangerous, not because they're convicted, but because they're poor. That is not freedom. That is not justice. That is systemic failure. But it doesn't have to be this way. In cities that have eliminated cash bail, crime didn't surge. People showed up for court. Jail populations dropped. Taxpayers saved money, and communities stayed intact. We know what works. What we lack, still, is the political will and public pressure to make it happen everywhere. So here's what you can do. Know your rights. Bail laws vary by state. Learn how yours work. Support community bail funds. These groups are freeing real people every day. Push your lawmakers. Demand bail reform at the state and local level. Share the truth. Talk about what bail really does and who it really hurts. Refuse to look away, because silence keeps the system alive. And most of all, vote. Not just for presidents, but for prosecutors, judges, and legislators who can rewrite this system from the inside out. Because freedom should never depend on the size of your wallet. And justice should never be something you have to buy. Marcus deserved better. We all do. Let's make sure the next person who gets arrested for being poor walks out of jail because the law finally said, enough.